Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of a medical system that mastered complex surgery, even using anesthetics, thousands of years ago, only to have that knowledge almost completely vanish. This is the fascinating rise and fall of Ayurveda. So let's just kick things off with a pretty wild question. Could an ancient medical system really perform complex surgery using anesthetics? I mean, it sounds like something out of science fiction, right? Well, the answer is very real, and to find it, we've got to travel way back in time. Our journey begins in ancient India. We're talking about the very dawn of one of the world's oldest medical traditions. This was a time of sacred hymns and spiritual texts that, believe it or not, held the seeds of some seriously profound science. I mean, just look at how deep these roots go. The first mentions of medicinal plants pop up in the Rig Veda, which is one of the oldest texts known to humankind. But this wasn't just folk knowledge. Over thousands of years, it was organized, tested, and built into a structured, formal system of medicine, what we now know as Ayurveda. So what does Ayurveda actually mean? Well, it's pretty straightforward when you break it down. Ayur means life, and Veda means science or knowledge. So literally, the science of life. And that's exactly what it was. It wasn't just about curing you when you got sick. It was a whole philosophy on how to live, how to stay healthy, the whole art of healing. And get this wasn't just about mixing up some herbs. Ancient Ayurveda was this incredibly complex and specialized field. It had 8 distinct branches. Look at this list. You've got internal medicine, pediatrics, toxicology, even things we think of as totally modern, like psychiatry. And right there, number 2 on the list, Salya Tantra. Yep, that's surgery. And 2 guys, Sushruta and Charka, were basically the giants of this entire system. They wrote these foundational texts that were less like philosophy and more like practical hands-on manuals. And here, right here, is where we get the answer to that first question. Sushruta's work on surgery was so detailed, so advanced, that yes, it absolutely included anesthetics. They used a substance called samohini to put a patient completely under before an operation. We're talking thousands of years ago. It's just mind-blowing. Okay, so you have this incredibly sophisticated medical knowledge in India. But it didn't just stay there. Nope. It kicked off a golden age, and its ideas started spreading all across the ancient world. During this era, India basically became, as this quote puts it, a luminous center for medicine. I mean, it was the place to be. You had doctors, scholars, and thinkers traveling from all over just to learn what was, at the time, the most advanced medical science on the entire planet. And we're not talking about a minor influence here. This was a game changer. Ayurvedic ideas helped shape medicine in Egypt, Greece, and Rome. In fact, some historians believe that giants of Western thought, people like Pythagoras and even Hippocrates, the father of medicine, actually traveled to India to study. It laid the groundwork for so much of what came later. And you can actually follow the breadcrumbs. This wasn't just a vague exchange of ideas. You can see specific treatments, like using datura for asthma, popping up directly in the writings of Greek physicians like Dioscorides. They were literally adopting Indian medical tech and using it thousands of miles away. The demand for these Indian medicines and herbs got so huge that it actually started to impact economies. You have the Roman historian Pliny complaining about the heavy drain of Roman gold to India just to buy these things. Think about that. It wasn't just an exchange of knowledge, it was a massive international trade industry. But, as is so often the case in history, things were about to change. A massive cultural and religious shift was coming, and it would completely alter the path of Ayurveda forever. That shift was the rise of Buddhism, and at its core was the principle of ahimsa, or nonviolence. Now, this powerful idea wasn't just about being kind to people and animals, it extended to the sanctity of the human body itself. The very act of cutting the body, even to heal it, came to be seen as a form of violence, or himsa, and that had a huge unforeseen consequence. So, what do you do when one of the main pillars of your medical system suddenly becomes taboo? You pivot. Surgery started to decline pretty rapidly. But the innovation didn't stop. Physicians had to find new ways to heal, so they developed this incredibly sophisticated new field called Rasa Sastra, which is basically a form of chemistry that used metals and minerals for healing. They traded the scalpel for the crucible. Now here's the great irony. While the rise of Buddhism was leading to the decline of surgery inside India, Buddhism itself became the main way that Ayurveda's other teachings spread outside of India. Buddhist monks became practitioners and teachers, rulers built public herb gardens, and the core texts were translated and carried all across Asia, from Sri Lanka to Tibet, China, and Japan. So even as Ayurvedic ideas were spreading east, back home, a perfect storm of problems was brewing. A series of pressures, both from the inside and the outside, began to slowly dismantle the system, leading to a long, slow decay. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was death by 1,000 cuts. First, that same religious doctrine that discouraged surgery also forbade dissecting dead bodies. Well, without dissection, you can't learn anatomy, so progress just stopped. Then, a series of invasions destroyed centers of learning, and countless texts were lost forever. And finally, new medical systems arrived, the Unani system and later Western medicine, and they started to take center stage. And the end result of all this was huge. That open, scientific, university-based culture that had made Ayurveda so powerful just faded away. Knowledge went from being a public science to a private secret, passed down from father to son within specific families. That spirit of discovery and original research that defined the Golden Age, it was basically gone. So what do we make of all this? After this incredible, centuries-long journey, what's the big lesson we can take away from the story of this lost art? I think the most important takeaway is that knowledge isn't set in stone. It's fragile. The exact same system that was once pioneering things like anesthesia and complex surgery was completely reshaped by culture, by religion, by politics. It shows how a vibrant, evidence-based science can transform into something very, very different over time. And that really leaves us with one final, and I think pretty urgent question. Ayurveda's story is this powerful, cautionary tale. It shows us just how brilliant and resilient human knowledge can be, but also how incredibly easy it is to lose. And it makes you wonder, what does it take to preserve what we know? And what are the forces that could cause it to slip away?